Welcome to the Geek and Review, a podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal profession. I'm Greg Lambert.
And I'm Kate Boyd, COO at Sente Advisors, standing in for Marlene this week. Sente is a legal innovation consultancy. We're tech agnostic, but in the interest of full disclosure, our team and clients have had really good experiences using Avvoka, the guest of today's show. And we consider Avvoka to be friends of Sente.
All right. Well, Kate, thank you very much for stepping in and co-hosting this week. If the viewers haven't seen, we had Kate and her husband, Ryan McLeod, on our Love and Legal Tech episode. So if you haven't caught that, go catch it. It's a lot of fun. So, Kate, great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks.
All right. Well, this week's guests are Giles Thompson, who is the head of growth at Avvoka, and Jun Choi, who is the growth executive at Avvoka. Giles and Jun, welcome to the Geek and Review.
Thank you so much.
So, Giles, do you mind just kind of giving us an overview of Avvoka and what the company does and what your role is there at the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Avvoka does primarily is we're a document automation solution, and I like to call this sort of the granny explanation. It's all it is essentially taking a document that could be a contract or something else entirely, perhaps a court form, uploading that to a platform, our platform, and then what that does is it automatically takes that document and then turns it into a questionnaire. There is some manual intervention, perhaps in that process, but a lot of it is taken care of automatically. And then that questionnaire is used by a lawyer, but sometimes a commercial person, to generate a contract or indeed a legal document usually. There's a lot more to it. We facilitate collaboration, negotiation, signature, and that kind of thing. But the core thing we do is facilitate that process for people who do complex legal documents and complex contracts like loan facilities, SPAs, and licensing agreements.
So when you tell your grandmother this, does she understand it?
You know what? That was maybe the auntie explanation. I bled into the auntie one. The
Gotcha.
granny one isn't. But...
So, Giles, what's your role there at Avvoka?
Yeah, so I'm head of growth, which is basically a newfangled startup-y term for heading up sales and marketing, and basically figuring out when the board asks for us to go quicker, how on earth we can do it with very little marketing budget and no additional staff. My background is legal, so I was at Herbert Smith Freehills, then Kirkland, and about 4 years ago I joined with absolutely no idea what I was doing other than a real desire to help lawyers and to figure out what goes on inside their heads.
Fantastic. And Jun, can you tell us quickly about your role?
Yes, I've worked closely with Giles. I've worked as part of Avvoka for the past 2 years as a growth executive. So I work with law firms, banks, corporates, and in-house teams across the world when it comes to their document automation needs.
Fantastic. So we see Avvoka as really having an innovative, once we get past the granny explanation, the way you approach this actually is really unique in the industry. I'm wondering if you can share just some details about recent advancements and things that are being introduced in the future that really make you stand out.
Yeah, of course. So to any newbies to document automation, Avvoka is a no-code document automation platform. What that means is you require zero coding experiences and knowledge to actually build in the automations, what we call placeholders and conditionalities that form parts of your documents and contracts. Now, recently, in the past few months, we've been working closely with our clients as well as prospects to release a whole host of AI-enhanced features. And there's two features to be specific. There's a SmartAutomation, which is used to, I suppose, automate the entire document without having to drag and highlight text, for instance. What you do instead is to press a button, and the AI technology and logic reading technology behind it will be able to prepare a template for you within seconds. And on top of that, what we can then do is to generalize and templatize your live deal documents into a ready-made template as well. So you'll be able to push through new use cases within a matter of hours compared to other document automation technology in the market. Another feature that we've released on top of that is SmartConsolidation. So that adds on the ability for you to combine different variants of mutually exclusive documents into a single master template. So all you have to do, say, for instance, to hire someone in the UK for a part-time agreement is to simply select UK employment part-time agreement. And that will bring you the relevant clauses, the relevant wordings that's associated with that specific variant of the document.
Very
So those
exciting. Giles, I know you gave me some previews of some of those upload. I'd love to hear, because I was like, oh, I gotta see this more. Go ahead and I know you want to add on a little bit there.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I was looking quite keen there. Yeah, I think really the main reason we've done this is not because all of these large language models have come on leaps and bounds in the last year or so. I guess we aren't looking for a use case for those technologies. One of the things that, Kate, you know better than most, and indeed you do too, Greg, actually, is that the key thing with any legal tech project is actually getting it going. But one of the things that we've struggled with, to be honest, in terms of scaling, and we're not unique as a document automation platform, is actually taking a really complex legal template. Often it's not a template that's even finished. It might just be a prior deal document or something quite messy, and maybe even with errors, and then turning that into a template. So actually it's quite an involved implementation as far as legal tech product implementations go. And it involves, playing with the core intellectual property that a lot of lawyers are super, super precious about for really good reason, and not least liability. So yeah, this whole use case is basically about making that process easier to get started and really lowering that barrier to entry. Often we hear, can we have one of your, we say, well, can we have one of your templates for an automation demo? And they say, we don't have templates. And then the conversation hasn't really gone beyond that. That's actually a lot more pervasive, I would say, in the US. I would say that in the UK, they've had probably a slightly more long established tradition of creating centralized templates and a centralized a practice area by practice area KM function. In the US, they're probably a little bit more scant. There are really notable exceptions on those templates. So actually, it's been a really key thing for us in working with US clients. And yeah, I imagine that's hopefully reflective of what some of you have seen.
Yeah, I think you're spot on the differences between the knowledge management in the US and the knowledge management in the UK and EU. And we've said it on the show before. It's much more of a technology here in the US, and it's much more of a human-centric design in the UK and Europe. And so I imagine, that it's very common for you to go to a US law firm and them not have a template. So is one of the big values right up front there is helping them kind of understand in what it means to set up a template?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I always say, and it's kind of a bummer to have to break it to people, is we can make the technology bit really easy, but actually the thinking through the template and the legal logic do the work. Is hard. But also the other point is, it always amazes me because lawyers know it's really hard. Because if it wasn't really hard and it didn't require someone with experience, then they wouldn't be doing it. So when people have that epiphany, which doesn't take very long because they're all smart people, then it's absolutely fine. But yeah, I think the other thing as well is one of the big promises of platforms like ours, and I think this is kind of a trend in all legal tech, is the promise of democratization. So overworked and frankly slightly depressed innovation and knowledge teams like the idea of lawyers being able to self-serve. And really, document automation historically has not really delivered on that. And our hope is that, for fairly simple legal contracts, that actually this technology means that lawyers will be able to actually self-serve, or particular types of lawyers will, in terms of actually taking a template, thinking, oh, I don't just want to do a mail merge here. I could do an Avvoka automation. But again, we're quite early on in that journey, and at the moment, it's the people who are using it are those that understand that these generative AI enhanced tools aren't all there yet.
So, Giles, I noticed that Avvoka has expanded the client base quite significantly. Do you mind telling us about the strategies that you've used to engage new clients in industries, and I imagine there's some future markets that you're targeting for expansion as well?
Yeah, totally. No problem at all. So I mean, one thing which I'll just address at the top is working with excellent partners. So, we work, I won't mention the name of the firm, but when we were quite new to the US market, we worked with Sente, with a firm that they had. And a lot of those hard bits that we're talking about and that consultation, and the questions that the client didn't think to ask was done by Sente. So that was really helpful for us. And actually, it's quite a referral based go to market strategy that we do. So that took on a lot more significance than just that client. So doing a really good job and doing service in a way that doesn't scale, that's very sort of service focused, not technology focused, so that ultimately we get those referrals and then we can scale. The US has been a really big market for us. We felt like about 2.5 years ago, was a bit of a tipping point in the US in terms of people being open to cloud technologies, in terms of people actually starting to feel, I mean, this is slight speculation, fee pressure. So we saw a real kind of uptake of document automation technologies. There's not that much greenfield in the top, large UK firms, but there was a bit more greenfield in the US. So we were quite lucky in that regard. And now we've been able to sort of double down on that. And one of the things we're doing is doing a lot more visits as well. So we're making sure that we're getting around Miami, Chicago, Houston, Dallas, New York, California this year. I think the other thing as well is a real focus on use cases. So speaking to clients about what they want really openly. And I think we have quite, and maybe you've got this from our vibe already, but we're fairly radically honest with our clients. So yeah, understanding what they want and building some fairly niche stuff for them. Yes, I think that's key. And I guess another thing finally would be looking not just at traditional ROI. So when people hear about document automation, they think about doing contracts faster. Now, a lot of people listening will be thinking, well, yeah, I'll make less money and hey, my business model works very well, thank you. Have a look at my drawings. So what we actually started looking at is ROI in the form of course, human happiness, but also mitigating regulatory risk. So we've had various use cases where there's a risk that, say, the IRS will come after you as a law firm if you make a tiny mistake on behalf of a client, where there are sort of filings for listed companies that need to be made, that kind of thing, especially where the end client involved is actually is a member of a board of one of those listed companies, for example. So that's been really helpful because lawyers actually do buy risk mitigation as a product, and also working in increasingly using APIs, because everybody knows, and again, this is where Sente often come in. The world is becoming increasingly connected from a cloud solution perspective, and I know, Greg, that's basically been your whole year in terms of what you've been doing with GenAI as well.
That is so true. Well, Kate, since Sente was mentioned a couple of times, do you want to talk about the role that you take at Sente to help Avvoka and other startups like this?
Sure. So in that particular case, our client was the law firm who was trying to evaluate and make a good decision about their document automation solution on a very large scale with some pretty complex requirements. We did a full matrix of comparisons across across the ecosystem. And Avvoka came out. There were, I think the story that we often like to tell is there were a few really key things. It was early in Avvoka's journey. There were some key things that, because of the scale of this client, we needed Avvoka to be able to do. And it was coming up on the Christmas holidays. And Avvoka said, no, give us 2 weeks. We're going to have that built into the platform. And we'll show it to you, functional as soon as everyone's back from New Year's. And it was this contract was contingent on that functionality being included. And we were super impressed. I think it was a busy Christmas for everyone. But the client was happy, and the solution, they've continued to really build on it and do some very, very interesting things. So no, we credit that a lot. I want to come to Giles's mention on the road trip and kind of going around the States. But before I do, Giles, a lot of what you've spoken about is really the law firm kind of view. Is your client base primarily law firms, or are you working with a number of corporates and any other parts of the industry?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely, it is more broad than that. I'm totally biased because I was at a private practice law firms, and sometimes I forget. So yeah, that's bad from me. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I mean, one of our really key clients is Warner Brothers Discovery. We also work with McDonald's as well, which is cool, as well as Booking.com, and a number of others. But I think one of the quite cool things about the likes of particularly Warner is, when you think about it, they are really an IP company fundamentally. And IP is protected, I know, as a former IP litigator, with lots and lots of contracts and other arrangements. So they're doing some pretty sophisticated things in terms of, commissioning films, TV shows, and there's a million types of different media that they're licensing out. So one of the key things we do for them is, where they're looking to generate revenue from those assets, and in increasing breadth of different ways those assets can be commercialized, often a lot of it quite novel and cutting edge. Our platform is what drives that. So yeah, absolutely. And it's quite fun to think that, in the past we've been the platform of use for signing new contracts to sell beers to pubs, or to order, potatoes, which, by the way, my dad sells as a farmer anyway, for fries at McDonald's.
So he really did mean it about Granny needing to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Well, let's jump in on this road trip, because I'm super excited. I'm so sad I missed the Houston event. But Jun, can you tell us a little? We're big fans of tech agnostic anything. And one of the really awesome things that I know happened here in New York in January, and that you just did in Houston, is your tech agnostic community events and bringing people together. So, Jun, I'm going to pass to you to fill us in.
Yeah, so it's a separate brand that we have called Logic and Drafting, and essentially what this is it's a vendor agnostic platform for all geeks about adopting automation, whether you're new to it or a 10-year veteran to it. You're invited to speak on it, and also attend. And it's essentially a safe space for you to share your war stories about the projects that you have ongoing, and just share insights into any tips and insights that you could benefit for your law firm's in-house teams as well. So we've gotten quite a bit of traction across the world. Like you say, we've had it in London, in New York. We've recently had it in Sydney, and also San Francisco as well. So we have what's called that US Summer Series coming up soon. So we're going to be having one in Houston and Chicago, which is going to be really exciting, and engaging with the crowd globally. We did have speakers from, iManage to Troutman Pepper, EY, Morgan Lewis, all the big names come and speak on it. So it's a really safe space for anyone interested in document automation, and it's free for all, essentially.
I love this safe space. It's like equal parts therapy and technology geeking out.
Exactly. And we find that lots of the speakers and also the audiences bond over their stories about document automation. So it's really nice to see people.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Lay on the couch and tell me about your document.
And nothing better to pull people together than a shared trauma, right? So.
It's a war story about building that template.
Giles, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, I find the first bit of those sessions is basically the confirmation that you're not going mad, that everybody else is having all of the same problems, and you get yourself into a bit of a tiz. You might learn something about how you're going to improve. But ultimately, the thing that really I like about it is, if you've been ahead of knowledge, you've been ahead of innovation, you've been a consultant working across multiple businesses, you actually truly understand the value and the subject matter expertise that these individuals have. Some of these individuals have been working in document automation, probably longer than Jun's been alive. And you learn a lot when you're doing that. So yeah, just championing those skills, connecting with those people, and frankly, us learning a little bit about the stuff we haven't thought about is really important. I think one of the things that was a bit of a frustration people had was they're super excited about GenAI, but actually people were saying, oh, can I ask the GenAI chatbot to draft me a perfect commercial lease agreement? And they're sat there thinking, well, I've been kind of trying to sell you almost this exact thing for years and years, and you didn't engage with me. And look, there's no shortcuts. Well, there's some shortcuts, but they're not actually shorter than the method I already sent you. So quite nice to, again, do a bit of crystal ball gazing during those sessions.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep that crystal ball handy because we're going to ask you that question later. So, Giles, and besides the logically drafted series that you guys are doing across the U.S. and other countries, what are some of the key projects that you've got in development there at Avvoka, say over the next year, and kind of what do you see your long-term vision there being?
Gosh, I think a lot of it is the AI side of things, but I think one of the elements, and this is going to get a little bit techie, this is definitely sort of whiz kid nephew level, is is actually around clause containerization. So Word and a lot of other tools out there aren't great at being able to be interrogated by software. So, fundamentally, knowing where a clause is within a document, where it begins, where it ends, and indeed what metadata or tagging or information is associated with that part. Word, for example, is fundamentally a word processing tool. It's not a contracting tool and a segmented taxonomy. It's not meant to be that. So what we're doing is, because we have a proprietary editor in HTML, we can actually start to dice up and label different clauses natively. Now, why is that important? Well, we think it's super, super important, for things like reporting, and we've been doing that in the past in terms of tracking clause amendments, tracking the instances of clauses for reviewability later down the line if we ever need to sort of look at, investigate, change contracts. But actually, the really important thing is to augment these new approaches to AI. So, everybody, on this call will be familiar with RAG approaches towards improving the results that you get from using these new technologies, and being able to segment and understand what is in your contract in a little bit more detail is really helpful for that kind of. I'm going to use the word augmentation because I'll just end up using the wrong word, and improving the results that you get, when applying these various different use cases, whether that be automatically creating your templates using our technology, or whether that be, say, for example, I'm speculating here, downloading a document from Avvoka and then using a tool like Microsoft Copilot on it. So actually, Copilot will work better, for example, in theory, where it understands the structure within that contract, by 100% from the outset. So it sounds kind of boring unless you're in this area, but actually it could be pretty innovative. The other thing which is kind of related to that is a lot of these technologies basically strip the documents that you're working with from, with cross-referencing and with house styles and that kind of thing. So actually we've got quite a cool HTML editor which can be integrated with those tools, but can also preserve things like cross-references, house styles, etc., which again sounds pretty dull if you're not in the space, but actually a lot of the problem that we find people are having is they can use these tools, but then what they get out is kind of garbage from a legal perspective for subsequent amends and also for presenting to a client. So doing all the AI stuff, doing the building blocks, great.
Since you mentioned Copilot and the fact that Microsoft Word is still a word processing program and not a contract automation program, do you think we're going to kind of have the same type of issue that we had with generative AI when it comes to Copilot, and that they think, oh, well, it's got Copilot now, so that does make this a contract automation program. Do you think there's going to be some over expectations on what Copilot by itself can do?
I think definitely. I think the first thing I want to say just before answering is I'm totally not a bear on this technology. I think it's absolutely amazing, but it's totally got its place. I mean, I take a step back off it and I think, well, what's the point of contracting? Fundamentally, what's the point? The point is for the lawyers to do as little as possible, right? And to let the people who've made a commercial agreement actually just agree and do as little back and forth. It's to have people understand each other and to kind of formalize that agreement. Now, for a lot of contractual negotiations, that means that actually coming up with something fundamentally unique, I guess, or off the cuff, let's say, is totally unhelpful. Actually, familiarity and having seen a particular type of provision in the past, and even having one from a defined list. So, for example, we work with the Loan Market Association, and we have a product called Loan LMA Automate with them, and they have recommended forms, and there's basically a market norm of the various different strengths of provisions that you might have in your loan facility, and that works really well. It speeds up those transactions. So I think the impact that it will have purely from that perspective, basically because of what the goal of contracting is, will probably be relatively limited. However, when it comes to novel clauses, I do think it's definitely I think of it more of document assembly rather than document automation. So your document automation, the building blocks of your contract, I think will largely be the same. There's only so many different permutations you can have in terms of a lot of that boilerplate. That may get you 80-90% of the way there, but the assembly will be really interesting in terms of making those bespoke amendments. I do definitely see that, but I do think you're going to want, of course, there's going to be, for lack of a better word, verification and ways of kind of improving the veracity of the responses that you're getting from a tool like that. But ultimately, as a lawyer, at least, I'd always want to see context. I'd want to actually be able to understand a red line versus my stock playbook or bank of different clauses, so I can look how off-piste I'm going. What I used to do as a trainee lawyer was I just look at the smarter, more experienced lawyers and see how different what I'd done was from them. Or, the classic is take their provision and then mark it up. So yeah, look, I think I've kind of covered it all off there, hopefully. For you.
So I would jump in, I think the concerns about generative being a part of this new technology are one really important thing for listeners to be thinking about. But I think security and control of client data is also something that we hear a lot. I know probably everyone on this call talks and thinks about a lot. What is Avvoka doing now to make sure that your current platform, you mentioned containerization, so as the platform moves ahead, what are some of the things that you're doing to ensure the kind of client data security and other security standards?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, ISO 27001, obviously SOC 2, equivalent. So absolutely fundamental, a starting point. Look, I don't think anyone necessarily has the right approach. I think we've seen with the whole cloud debate that often this stuff is kind of horses for courses. So, is on-prem safer, is cloud safer? Look, I'm not qualified to tell you, but we're often able to be fairly flexible on that. And we've kind of taken that same ethos when it comes to these large language models. So one of the things we've been most keen to do is actually to collaborate with our clients. So we've built, for lack of a better metaphor, we've built the car, okay? And the LLM is the engine. And what we've said is, clients will sell you the car, will sell you all of the gears and the nuts and the bolts. You recommend and you bring the engine. So what we've seen with a lot of clients is they wanted to use, ChatGPT, and they want to have, their own Azure hosted instance, and they want to plug it in. And that's absolutely fine. It does mean you have some limits in terms of what you can do with the prompting. But what it does do is it does sort of future-proof us. But to answer your actual question, it does mean that they can get a little bit more comfortable with that risk, because ultimately with regard to that stuff, they stay in control of that. that side of things. And ultimately, I think a lot of people are just taking a view themselves with these types of technologies. And no matter how transparent we are, it's fairly hard for us to take that view on behalf of every single one of our clients in a blanket way, because everybody's looking at it a little bit differently. That may change. But again, as I kind of alluded to already, we're kind of making that divorce the case because we're a little bit worried about, we don't know who's going to win this. Everything's changing so fast. It may even be that our clients start plugging in multiple, or it just becomes a commercial decision as well.
Very interesting. Well, now we've reached the time where I need you guys to bring back the crystal ball and peer into it. And I want kind of both of your perspectives on what do you think are some changes or challenges that you'll face at Avvoka over the next, couple of years, and also for the industry. What do you think are some things that we should be aware of?
I don't mind jumping in first, Jun. So I think, and I hope I haven't taken yours. I think a really key one will be dealing with the classic Gartner trough of disillusionment. One of the things that we've seen in the last 18 months was document automation budgets cut and then replaced with larger generative AI budgets. Now, generative AI, is, I don't need to tell you, is more than just chatbots. So what people have quite quickly realized is actually their use cases for generative AI are fundamentally the same things as they were doing before, just slightly better. So what we're noticing actually is people are coming back to the likes of document automation and they're wanting a generative AI enhanced version of it, or they're spending their money on iManage and they're wanting a generative AI enhanced version of it. So I think that sort of trough of disillusionment when it comes to the actual technology, but then actually I think one of the big ones is they will get back to the same place that they were before. And as vendors, unless we're very realistic about what we can achieve by leveraging these technologies, and we're honest about the fact there will be manual work, there will be checking, there will be filling in those gaps, we risk being in 2 years' time in a position where actually we didn't ride that wave and we frustrated people even more in maybe, I guess, the fourth or fifth wave of potentially looking to make a lot of these technologies mainstream. So I think that's a big challenge. And honestly, I'm not that hopeful given some of the research that's come out recently and the reaction to that research. I think you probably know what I'm alluding to.
I may have a clue. and Jun, what do you see in your crystal ball?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm definitely in agreement with Giles when it comes to the discussions around AI. It's this debate where, will AI completely replace document automation, and everyone has the right and views to this topic. But the way I see it, and especially with the Avvoka and the path we're taking with SmartAutomation and SmartConsolidation that I introduced at the beginning of this podcast, is for document automation to work alongside AI as opposed to fully replacing the actual platform. Generative AI is a big topic of law firms, not just here in the UK, but also in the US. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see what kind of use cases and products that appear with that wave. But I think it's I agree with Giles's point about matching document automation building Avvoka with AI technologies and essentially playing the ROIs, the values you get out of document automation at the core of what we have to offer to our clients.
So what I'm hearing is you've got the combination of the document automation tool that's going to make sure that we're not imagining things. Ooh, my computer thinks I'm giving a thumbs up. The smart features, so starting to bring in some of that technology with the security. And then you've got the community events that will help us deal with all of our trauma as we fall into the trough of dissolution.
Second.
You guys, I think you guys are future-proof. The business plan is there.
We try our best.
We just start charging for the therapy, I think. That's the way forward.
Yeah, you may not want that to be a free event for long.
Yeah, so the first one is free. The follow-ups are where they get you.
Yeah, it'll start to be like it's going to become the Gen AI budget carve out.
We're the doctors and we're Big Pharma.
Here we go. Giles got all of those today. Well, thank you so much for coming to the Geek in Review today and talking with us. Before I start to close out, Greg, anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. So Giles and Jun, thank you very much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, it's a real pleasure.
And of course, thanks to all of you, the listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoy the show, please share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you. So you can reach out to us on social media. I can be reached primarily on LinkedIn at Greg Lambert. Kate, how about you?
I am also on LinkedIn. I'm one of many Kate Boyds, but I'm the one at Sente Advisors.
She told me she was the Kate Boyd. So.
Yeah, you won't find me under that on LinkedIn. There's a lot of us. Giles and Jun, where can listeners find more about Avvoka, yourselves, and the Logically Drafted events?
So with Avvoka, you could search avvoka.com and saying Logically Drafted, it's logicallydrafted.com. I'm sure you'll be able to find Giles Thompson and Jun Choi on LinkedIn as well. So we're happy to help if you have any queries about the event, but also just talk to automation more broadly.
Great.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Giles, you?
No problem at all. I was just saying thanks, Jun.
All right. And so thanks again, guys. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. So thank you, Jerry. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.